Can you really make decent money flower farming? Well, by no means am I making enough money to flower farming for it to be my sole income. You can make pretty decent money, and here is how I over doubled my money in my second year of flower farming. Hi, my name is Kristen and I'm the owner of Shifting Blooms. I am a farmer florist based out of a little town very close to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I garden in zone 3B and we have a fairly short growing season, anywhere from 90 to 120 days, depending on the weather. When I share you my numbers, this is under some very difficult circumstances, and I definitely have less time to make money than most other flower farmers that you will see on YouTube. But despite all the challenges that I face just in the growing season where I live, plus my general growing challenges from this year, I was able to over double my money, and I'll go through exactly the numbers and where those things came from at the end of the videos. I've been growing and arranging cut flowers for years. I even did 2 weddings before I was officially a farmer florist, and I was just always that person who I would come into your yard if you had lots of cut flowers. I'd ask, can I make you a bouquet? I'd just like snip a little bit here, snip a little bit there, and come up with something fabulous. I officially started my business in 2021, and it was a terrible year to start a business. For one, we were still smack dab in the middle of COVID. We had a drought. A really, really terrible drought. That growing season, it rained exactly 3 times all summer. It was awful. I still lived in the city, so I actually had 3 gardens to try and make sure that I had enough flowers. But because of the drought, I was constantly scrounging and having to purchase flowers from other flower farmers in order to just like keep my business going. Despite all of those challenges, as a first-year flower farmer, I was able to make over $6,000 at the end of the year. Now, if you've watched this video before, you'll see that number is smaller, but I also did that video before I had done my Christmas sales, and I think even before I did my pumpkin sales. So that's why the numbers are a little bit different. In my first year of flower farming, my strategy was simple. I would just grow a little bit of everything in all of the seasons and kind of see what stuck. So basically the throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks strategy. And while it did work, and I definitely learned a lot, the frustrating thing was there were many weeks where I would go to pick my bucket, look at my colors, and think, what am I making with this mess? But somehow I made it all work. However, in my second year, I decided to be much more strategic about what kind of colors and flowers I was purchasing. As usual, I was trying to get a variety of flowers for the spring, the summer, and a little bit of fall seasons that we have here. However, I was not willing to invest tons of money in either tulips for the spring or dahlias for the fall. I find in our zone 3 climate, both crops are very difficult to grow, especially with tulips. There's just such a high failure rate. These are my tulips. Or with dahlias, you know, if you don't start them on time, if it's not the perfect year, they don't get rain in the right time, you just do not get the blooms. And I was so glad that I didn't invest too much money in bulbs, tubes, and cormers, because I had a lot of bug pressure. I was not very successful with any of those main expensive crops. So I think it was a really wise decision to not invest too much money, but still dip my toe into it. As well, I was really noticing, probably like everyone else, that everyone's really into dried flowers. So that was another mistake I made in my first year, is that I really didn't grow or set aside anything for dried flowers. So I tried to rectify that, was able to dry some stuff, but it still wasn't enough. And I think going into year 3, I'm going to be planting about 3 times as much. So because I didn't have enough flowers, every week I'd have to make really difficult decisions. Do I need the straw flower for this week's bouquet, or do I need the straw flower for drying? If you've watched the Backyard Business series, you know that it was often a really difficult decision. Now, there are tons of ways that you can make money as a flower farmer, but I am picking the revenue streams that make the best use of my skill set. So for me, that is weddings, a CSA membership, pop-ups, and a few events. Unfortunately, not all of them were a raging success. So let's go through the different elements of my business and I'll tell you what worked and what didn't, and approximately how much money I made from each of those avenues of revenue. First, my biggest success, which was definitely weddings. I booked 13 weddings and 1 corporate gig for a total of about $12,000. Now, I know it would have been much more satisfying for you as the viewer if every week I shared with you approximately how much money I made, but I felt like if I was the bride and I was watching a video about my wedding, I would not want everyone to know exactly how much I paid for my florist. So I chose not to disclose those numbers week by week, but I have no problem lumping them all together in one group thing. One thing with my weddings that really worked this year is I finally got help. So the first couple of weddings I did on my own, but once I got pregnant, I got way too tired. As usual, the biggest struggle with weddings was, even though I had meticulously planned out what I needed for which wedding and to just make sure that I had enough of the trendy colors, Mother Nature didn't always cooperate, and there were some weddings where the colors I needed would happen like a week or 2 weeks later. Those shoulder season weddings, so like especially the spring weddings, were the most difficult to do. I also took on one off-season wedding in February, and being that I don't usually work with imported flowers, and especially in the dead of winter, when I got the product, I was extremely disappointed in it, didn't really know how to work with it, and so that was probably the hardest wedding that I did all season. But then of course, once I was in blooms, it was great. Now, you know, except for storms, rain, chickens, children, and general lack of time, just life, things actually went pretty smoothly, and I think pretty much all of my brides were really happy with their results. For the first time ever, I decided to open up a CSA. If you're not familiar with what that is, that's Community Supported Agriculture, and otherwise known as bouquet subscription in the flower farming world. And so I had 18 people that took me up on that offer, and they got 4 bouquets from June to September. And for the most part, the subscription thing was pretty successful. There were definitely a few little learning curves and like little hiccups just in organizational things that I maybe didn't think through, but nothing that can't be fixed for next year. And all in all, I think everybody liked their bouquets. It was great. Lovely experience. I loved getting to meet the ladies that purchased them, and it's something I will definitely be offering in 2023. So with 18 subscriptions at $125 each, that comes to a grand total of $2,250. In 2021, pop-up sales were basically the core of my business, or at least how I started out. And if you're just farming from a backyard, first year, it's often one of the most easy and achievable ways to just start getting some clientele. And it was interesting because this year in 2022, I thought I would still be continuing with an almost weekly schedule of pop-up bouquets, but I found that I did one pop-up sale at the end of July. I think I sold 1 bouquet. And then really the only other pop-up sale I did was my pumpkin centerpiece sale. Now that was a really successful sale for me. I'm very lucky where I live that, well, there are other people who offer fancy pumpkins and pumpkin workshops. They don't do exactly what I do. So I'm pretty much the only one that you can get this specific style of pumpkin from. And from this pop-up sale, I made $901. If you're interested in the video, you can also watch it here. It was a fun one. Last year, events were a huge moneymaker for me. And even though I had really high input costs because I didn't have things like tables and clippers and sort of buckets and all the things that you need to run those bouquet nights, it was still a really great way to get some new customers to come into my world. People were really excited to do these bouquet nights, and I also didn't have to advertise them very much. They just filled up really, really quickly. Well, that was not the case in 2022. My guess is because of COVID and restrictions being loosened, people were less interested in doing things that they could do during COVID and more interested in things that they feel like they missed out on. So basically it felt like everyone was at the lake or on vacation, or if they weren't there, they felt like they maybe didn't have enough money to do something extra. So 3 out of the 5 events that I offered had absolutely no sales. And of the events I did offer, I had to run some of them at a loss just so I could like make the event go on and have pictures for next year essentially. Now, I realize for everybody that is not a very sound business strategy, but for my business, it makes sense. So I still did it, and I'm fine taking that loss on it. But again, the people who did come out had a fantastic time. It was really nice to do collaborations with Style and Gray's YXC and also with YXC Picnics. These two are fabulous women business owners, and I was really thrilled to be able to partner with them this year. One change that I probably would make with my events for next year is I probably offer them at a lower price point, but then also offer less of myself. For my bouquet nights, I offer food, and I also offer pretty intensive instruction. Like everybody, I'm walking around helping them to fix their bouquet. I'm walking them through the process. Like they'll actually learn something. But I think maybe next year, the idea might be to hand them their clippers and their bucket with a few instructions and be like, here you go, have fun. I also did my first ever market. This was in the spring when I had tulips, and if you've seen this episode, then you know about the great tulip fiasco of 2022. It was still a really sad moment when all my tulips died. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Yeah, I wanted to try and market out just to see if I actually liked them. I think in 2023, I will definitely not be doing regular markets. I don't have enough flowers. I don't have my soil under control. Like, there's just so many variables. I just don't think I can add that to my plate. And then especially with a baby on the way, I don't really want to add like any brand new elements to my business, as I'm gonna just need to adjust to life with a newborn again and being a mom of 4. But anyway, from that market, I made $425. I also made a few custom orders for people. So most of these were customers that I had from last year who just said, hey, I have an event. Can you make me an arrangement worth X amount of money? And I did. So those came to about $200. Not very much, but again, I was really struggling for flowers, so I wasn't sad that I wasn't getting a ton of custom orders. All right, so here's the part you're waiting for. The grand total of my sales thus far, and remember, I haven't done any of my Christmas markets yet, I have 3 planned, is, drumroll please, $15,175. So I'm obviously really pleased with how much I was able to grow my business. Now, I know everybody always wants to know, like, what were your inputs into the business? And so how much did you actually profit? Now, I haven't done like all my books and figured it out, but I'm gonna say my best estimate is I probably put at least 1/3 of that money back into the business. So that means buying seeds, the extra water and electricity costs from seed starting and the occasional watering, paying people for flowers. So of course, Monica and Allison are always my go-tos to help me out whenever I don't have the right colors or not enough. Also hiring out my helpers on occasion, and probably at about the 30% mark, but might even be as high as the 40% mark. I think even when you deduct that amount of money, that's still a very respectable side income and just shows what you can do when you're able to like use your best strengths and be both the marketer, the grower, and the artist. So if you're a brand new flower farmer and you're going into your first year, or you're just like on the sidelines kind of thinking about taking that first step, I invite you to check out my course, Backyard Business. So this course is designed for newer flower farmers, or if you've been at it and it's just not going very well. Some things I'm assuming when you're coming into this program. First, you probably live in a colder climate like I do. As you can see, we've got snow around us. We do have lots of students that are in much warmer climates. I've still seen a lot of success, but the course is geared to those of us in cold climates with short growing season. As well, if you're someone who's looking for a course that will help you like level up with tractors, really large scale farming, I am not the course for you. I can pretty much promise you that I will never be a full-time flower farmer. It will like probably be a part of my life for a very long time, but it will always be on some sort of part-time basis. And I really never intend to like get into machinery on those really large scale. However, we do have some content about selling to florists and like what to look for if you're thinking about going the wholesale route, stuff like that. But again, on a really large scale, probably not the program for you. The great thing about the program is now that we're out of beta, I can tell you that my students have had successful first years of flower farming. They've sold out at markets, they've sold out with their florists, they've sold out with their pop-up sales. Now, of course, everything isn't roses. These are all normal people, but by and large, the ones who are showing up, reading the information, coming to the Zoom calls, doing those kind of things, they are making money as farmer florists. I know you're probably tempted to think like, oh, I don't need a course. I can just figure this out myself. I can go it alone. But friends, I feel like 2023 is going to be a real wild ride. Like, not even just in flower farming, but in general, like internet marketing and any marketing. The economy, the landscape, everything, it's changing, and it's changing so rapidly. You don't want to be an island to yourself. So really consider, like, what is your time worth? What would it be worth you to have a community? What would it be worth to you to not have to like scroll endlessly through Pinterest and YouTube and trying to figure out like, who do I actually listen to? What makes sense for me? And have to just make those decisions in a vacuum. If you want more information, definitely check out the link below, sign up, and if at all possible, you want to sign up before November 4th, because that's when we have our first live Zoom call for the 2023 season. And in that Zoom call, I'm going to go through my entire plan. I'm going to lay out every single seed I'm buying, kind of what I want to do with it, trends that I'm seeing, things that I think you should do or at least consider in your own business. And I know that's going to be an extremely valuable call. Also, just a tiny little disclaimer, because I am pregnant, you should know that for the month of January, which is when my baby is due, I might not be as available that month, but otherwise I am there. I am in our private Facebook group, and I would love to see you and have you join me. All right, friends, we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.